That's what happens as a pundit, that you need to be providing something special. And so where do you get something special? You don't get it in the New York Times. You get it from, fringe theorists, and you assert that these fringe theorists, they're right, and all the mainstream evidence-based studies debunking the fringe, that this is all part of some, globalist conspiracy. So, Dennis Prager's absolutely gone down the rabbit hole on COVID. He had Michael Fomento on many, many times, about 4 times during the early part of COVID in March and April of 2020, saying that COVID was nothing. It was not a big deal. It was overhyped. So Prager initially started off as a denialist, and then he's just gone into all these really fringe theories about he's on there's some sort of protocol where you take hydroxychloroquine. Yeah, globalists are a thing, but that doesn't mean that everything that you attribute to them is real. That doesn't mean that they're behind everything nefarious and evil in the world. So yeah, Prager went down the rabbit hole. He said that the lockdowns were the greatest mistake in human history, and there simply isn't the evidence for that. Now, you can say that this aspect of the lockdown was ill-advised, or maybe the lockdowns were an overreaction at this time and this place, but there's no evidence, there's no strong evidence right now to say that the lockdowns in response to COVID were the greatest mistake in human history. They seem to be part of a millennia-old approach to infectious disease, social distancing. It's there in the Torah, right? Prager loves the Torah. Prager believes the Torah comes from God. Well, God commands social distancing with regard to certain infectious diseases. So social distancing in reaction to a widespread deadly infectious disease that's raging all around you seems like a fairly prudent policy. So what was the greatest mistake in human history? I don't know. I'll have to think about that. George Soros is a globalist. He has funded all the DAs who refuse to prosecute extreme leftist violence. Right. So George Soros seems to be extremely effective. So I am curious, what makes George Soros so effective? That's what I want to know about. How has he been so influential? How has he gotten so much bang for his buck in influencing social, cultural, political events in directions that he favors? I think that's fascinating to me, and I want to know more about it. So yeah, George Soros and his foundations were kicked out of Hungary, and so there have been many reactions to George Soros, but overall it sure seems to me like George Soros has been far more effective than the reactions to him. So contrast George Soros with the alt-right. So I think it's clear George Soros has been far more effective than his opponents, overwhelmingly so. And Soros is not just effective because of green energy dollars. I mean, he's been effective for a long time. So why is George Soros so effective? Then why were the alt-right so ineffective, right? The alt-right aroused an opposition that absolutely crushed it. George Soros has aroused tremendous opposition, but yet Soros still manages to be more effective than his opposition. So when you have a conflict, why is one side more effective than the other side? To me, that's of prime importance. That's what I want to know about. And I don't see the world in terms of monsters and devils. So George Soros is not a monster and a devil. George Soros is a human being who's made some canny financial decisions. I'm sure that there are many wonderful qualities to George Soros, and he also pushes a political approach that is complete anathema to me. But he's a human being who's been very effective in the world. So I want to know about what makes people effective and what makes people ineffective, which political, social, cultural, religious movements are effective versus which movements are not. And the effectiveness of a movement or an ideology is often unrelated to the truth of the movement or the ideology. So trying to figure out whether something is true and good is not sufficient. You also have to figure out why it's effective or not effective. So Glib Medley says World War I gets my vote as the biggest mistake in human history. Yeah, that sounds like a strong argument. And I think the most influential book of the past 200 years is Charles Darwin's The Origin of Species, which I just finished and was not an easy read, and it has some literary moments, but it was quite the slog getting through The Origin of Species. But when you look at the consequences of The Origin of Species, it seems to me far and away the most influential book of the past 200 years. Curtis Yarvin endorsed Joe Biden because he thought his winning would cool down the wokesters. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what value Curtis Yarvin brings to the table. So, from the overwhelming majority of what I've read and heard, I just don't see the value proposition in Curtis Yarvin. I would find him fun to talk to. Like, I'd find it fun to hang out with Curtis Yarvin and chat with him. I'm not sure I'd be able to get a word in edgewise, but I just don't see the value in he has so many ideas and theories, and I'm sure some of them work, but some of them seem so bogus. So Michael Anton had Curtis Yarvin on for a 2-hour discussion on the Claremont Institute podcast, and Anton and Yarvin were eager to shift the Overton window far beyond anything resembling democracy. They want to substitute an elaborate and sophisticated justification for tyranny. So Anton doesn't explicitly endorse Curtis Yarvin's most outlandish ideas, the idea of having a king rule over us. But at the same time, Anton never offers a substantive critique of Curtis Yarvin's arguments and assertions. He merely expresses pragmatic or tactical objection, as if the primary fault in Curtis Yarvin's ideas is that they are unrealistic.